Alright, welcome to part 2. I have the same still life setup. I haven't changed it. I'm not going to be able to do it all off the still life. Some of it I'm going to have to pull the objects forward and show you things, which is a little different than you're going to have to do it, but I think it's the only way for me to be able to explain it to you via video. Okay? I just want you to remember the steps that we're talking about here. Crosshair, basic unit, box it all fits in, intuitive gesture, guidelines, also called hash marks, shapes, and then an accurate contour drawing of the edge and the shapes. I recommend that you actually make a little cheat sheet like this, so that when you go to do this process and I'm not there, you actually can just review it and say, okay, 7 steps. What do I do first? I'm lost. What do I do? What do I do? Professor Warner-Davies, what do I do? If you're in class, that's fine. But you're not in class, so go ahead and give yourself a little bit of help and create one of those. That way you're all ready to go. You don't have to think about it too much. You just got to actually start the drawing and think about that instead of, what steps do I do? Oh no, I can't remember. Okay, I think I made my point on that. So, crosshair. What did I say about crosshairs before, if you remember? They need to be square to the edge of the page, right? What does that mean? Think back with me to the project, to the lecture, and think about what does that mean to be square to the edge of the page. Parallel to the side of the page, okay? It means this middle point is parallel to that, and this one is to there. Do I expect you to get out a T-square and draw it perfectly and measure it? No, I don't. And would that be practical? Not really, because we're trying to learn how to draw. It wouldn't be practical at all if you're out in the field sketching, but it's more likely that I don't want you to do it because I want you to learn how to do straight lines by hand before we start using rulers a lot. So the main thing is you're going to want to just use your arm and get the back of your hand and then just get as straight of a line as you can, like a long stroke. I've talked to you about this before. And you're going to get something fairly straight. It doesn't have to be perfectly in the middle or anything, as far as like perfectly measured, but you do want to get something fairly straight. You want it to be looking closer to this, not like that and that, right? It needs to be closer to this type of a line. Why is that? Because this is a good reference point. That is not really a good reference point. Okay? So do your best to get it pretty accurate. And use the back of your hand, like the long stroke of your hand to do it. You can kind of do like a quick, you can do one that's like light and then darken it up. And you're going to want to use your elbow if you notice that I'm doing this really lightly, you probably can barely even see it because I want to be able to erase it at the end. I don't want it to be like this really hard dark line like the other one I did. This is like a hard dark line, right? Because if I try to, I don't want this to be stuck on the drawing at the end of it. I don't want it, if I try to erase this, which I will, I'm always going to be left with some of it showing through. So it'll erase, but not perfectly. So I want it to be a lighter line, okay? It's a reference line, it's a hash mark. And you're going to see as we go through this process, you're going to be doing quite a lot of hash marks at certain stages where you kind of do, this is what I mean by hash mark. marks like this, little marks, okay? Those are for your measuring, and you're going to want to do them lightly because, again, if they're really dark, it's hard to erase them when you're later in the process. You don't want to keep them forever on there. They're just for you, for the building up of the drawing. They're not part of the final drawing. They're like a tool or jig that you're making as part of your drawing. You're adding them to help you do the drawing. And then when it's done, you want them to go away and just the drawing to be there. All right? So they're part of the observational drawing process. Because of that, it means you're going to want to work at first with a pretty light pencil. You can work with an HB pencil, which is the regular yellow pencils, or you would do a drawing version of it. But one of the H ones would be even better. If you have a mechanical pencil with an HB lead in it, you could do that. You could technically use the B pencils, but they're going to be harder to erase, and they give you really dark lines, so you want to stay away from those until you're later on down the process, the steps. You're going to use the crosshair lightly. The basic unit measurement is hash marks. Same with the box. The intuitive gesture, you're still going to want to use the light pencil, guidelines light. Then when you get to these stages, you're going to darken up the drawing, the shapes, and the contour drawn edge. So that's partially why you have those H pencils and then those B pencils for different purposes. As well as later when we get into shading, you'll use the B's for shading. And the softer the lead, the darker you can get it. So hopefully that clarifies your supplies. You're going to be doing this on your 18 by 24 paper. You can use your newsprint or your white paper. Early on in the course, I have you guys use newsprint more often because these are beginning drawings and maybe you're not super happy with them, so you don't want to use the more expensive paper. Later, when you spend more time, you're going to want to use the white paper. And when we get into shading, you're going to want to use it because then you can get the brightest whites and the darkest darks that way. Okay? So, I got my crosshair on the paper. I now figure out what my basic unit of measurement is going to be in this whole thing. And if you remember from the slideshow, I said to you that one sculpture would be a good unit of measurement. So what do you think out here would be good? Look around. You can't see it as well, maybe, but I think maybe the cap of that mouthwash would be really good. Why do you think that might be good? Because if you think about it, it's not too big or too small. It's just about the right size. Use something too big, like try to use this entire bottle. Then the problem with that is it'd be like, okay, turn the bottle sideways. There's one and a bit of them. How can you compare it very well? There's no way to easily compare it. And if I use something too small, like say the tiny little part of the salt shaker right there, well, that's not going to work very well because I have to go, okay, there's one of them, now there's 25 of them just up to this edge. It's too little. It doesn't give me a helpful comparison. Not a very helpful ratio. So I'm going to pick this, and this is where I'm going to take you through the process now of creating a box around that the whole thing would fit into. Okay? Let's first just put our basic unit of measurement down on the page. Here's my page. Here's the still life, how they correspond. Notice I have it sideways, landscape, because this is wider than it is tall. Now, if I drew a center line down my vision, just like this, and I kind of had a crosshair out there in front of me on the picture plane, which side would it be? Would the cap of the mouthwash be in? Which side would which quadrant of my crosshair would it be in? Here, 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 or here? Here, right? It's going to be in the top right one. So that means I'm going to want to put it down on the paper there. It's really important for me to put it down, even if it's not in exactly the perfect spot, I should say, because I'm going to use it to compare everything else against. So I need to have it. And if you remember from part 1, I went on and on about this, that it's not a one-to-one measurement, it's a visual measurement. So this is how I'm going to figure out where the box is as well, at the same time, the big crate. I have one of those, and if you remember, I measured from there to the edge. I'm going to drop my hand down. I'm going to hold my arm all the way out, move my thumb up, capture this measurement, and hold firmly on it, not moving my hand. Then I'm going to flip it down and go and hold it to the very edge of my still life. I'm lining up with the bottle, and I'm going 1, and I'm seeing where the tip of my pencil is corresponding on the objects. It's right by the UPC code of that bottle. I'm going 1. Then I'm moving my hand over 2. I'm checking where the tip of the pencil is again, and then I'm moving 3. Oh, it's to the edge of the book now. Okay. 4. Now it's to that pink tab. 5. 6. 7. Almost a little under 7. So 7 of them. My basic unit of measurement, the whole thing is going to be 7 wide. So I can write that down on my page. 7 wide. Just to help me remember. And I'm going to find it again. I'm going to return to that basic unit measurement over and again. 1 there. Okay, how many high is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? We already figured that out in the last video. So 4 high. You don't have to write this down, but it can be useful for you. So I know that whatever size I pick for my unit of measurement, I have to be able to get 4 of them on 4 high and 7 wide. So if I pick this much space, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. That would actually work for the height. If I pick that much space, width-wise, I could go 1, 2. Every time I'm doing the same thing on my paper, I was doing visually, remembering where it was. 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I can't get the whole thing in, so I got to make it a little smaller. Go 1. Okay, let's try this. 1. I'm going to try making it like this big. I'll go 1. Can you see? Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's enough room. So I'm going to do it about that big. This is not the same amount of space as my measured distance. It's not 1-to-1. It's actually bigger than the visual measuring of the cap. Okay? So I think the cap's towards the top, over to almost the far right, and I'll make it about that big. So I'm just going to put it down, and I'm going to do it pretty carefully. I'm actually going to make sure I really know that's my basic unit measurement. Okay? This line I might even do a little darker than my light lines, because I want to make sure I can return to this again and again and compare things to it. It's like a legend on a map. Alright? I want to make sure I keep that accurate. I already created a little problem for myself, because I'm talking and trying to do it at the same time. I got my unit of measurement a little bit swirly-whirly right there. See how that line is a little bit off? Has extra hairy bit to it. So I'm just going to take and I'm going to make it really clean. Right off the bat, I'm going to just redraw it really cleanly, so I know exactly where it's at. Okay, this bottle cap may move a little bit, okay? It might not fit very well there, but I'm going to keep that unit of measurement because, like I said, it's the legend on my map. I'm mapping out the space on my page. In a way, that's kind of part of what this observational drawing idea is. If you imagine if you have a window in front of you with a whiteboard marker on it and you drew the scene, well, we're kind of doing that, and you can map things out and compare them. It's the same idea. So some methods of drawing, teaching like have you actually do that on a piece of glass. And if you wanted to, you could use a window in your house and draw on it with a whiteboard marker as long as it erases. Or if you own the house, it doesn't matter either way. You would be able to see how a picture plane works in that way. Okay? Random aside. So there it is. Now I'm going to do the big box. I've got my crosshair. I've got my basic unit of measurement, right? Little cheat sheet. Now I'm going to do the box it all fits into. What do I mean by that? Well, we kind of figured it out already when we were figuring out the basic unit of measurement. It was 4 high and 7 wide, right? There we go, 4 high and 7 wide. So I wrote that down just to help myself out. So we're going to do the box. We'll have to have 4 high and 7 wide, but it's going to fit inside of. Just going to pause it for a minute so I can adjust my drawing board. I'm going to have to start doing this in darker pencil than I would like because otherwise you're not going to be able to see it. So I'm using the darker pencil, but when you're doing this, you need to use that light H pencil, HB. 2H would be a good one. That way you don't get the hash lines too dark on your project, okay? But you won't be able to see my pencil lines otherwise. So here's my basic unit measurement. I got to have 7, so I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's going to be about there, and I started here with a mark, okay? And then 4 high. I'm going to use my pencil again and go 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's about there. So I probably want to put one on my actual crosshair on the actual thing. So I know the whole thing, my whole drawing, is going to have to fit inside of this area. But my whole still life is going to fit inside of this area on my paper. Between all those little marks. Okay? This is the stage now where I know if it all fits in there, I can do an intuitive gesture. I can do an intuitive gesture of the whole thing, or I can even do it of, I can make some more boxes like the general shape of the mouthwash bottle, for example, and then do a gesture inside of it. But I'll just do it this way. I'll do an intuitive gesture, which is closest thing you're ever going to get to be allowed to do a sketchy drawing in this class, right? Because I've told you before, don't do doing these type of drawings, sketchy, hairy drawings. Well, you don't need to do it like that for this either, but it can be a little looser. I still think it'd be really good for you to use a careful line, and you're going to want to use your light pencil to do it, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go, all right, here's the lid of the, I'm going to be very careful not to ruin my basic unit measurement. Here's the lid of the mouthwash. Just going to kind of carefully do careful pencil lines, but light. I'm going to say, okay, it's probably like that. It goes kind of down the very bottom of my thing. I'm not being super overly careful. I'm just kind of giving it a contour eyeballing like I've been doing. I'm not spending a ton of time necessarily like where I'm perfectly doing it, but I could definitely spend time doing it like the contour drawing. Okay? That's the mouthwash. I'm going to go over here. Is the book, the top book. And I'm going to go, okay, kind of lay it out, angles. Lightly drawing. I'm just giving it a light contour drawing. I mean, intuitive gesture drawing, I'm sorry. It's hard to draw on top at the same time, but nonetheless, I think it's going to be a pretty big book because it's bigger than the bottle, so it's almost as big as the bottle. So I got to have it way over there and have it back going that way. goes almost to the very bottom. So I'm just going to do it. This is the closest thing to a sketchy drawing you'll ever see me tell you to do. And you could go a little slower with this process. I'm trying to get it going so you can see how I'm working, and we can get moving forward, but it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to take this information and use it to measure. And then now I'm going to put this neti pot on there. I'm going to go, okay, maybe it's around there. So I'm going to carefully just get some shapes down. This is the reason why I'm doing this, is so I have something to work against and work with when I'm doing the measuring. I want to do a pretty accurate job of it, but it's not going to be perfect because afterwards I'm really going to take and measure this, and when I do measure it, I'm going to get really accurate with that, and I'm really going to sit there and redraw it with my contour edge being super accurate once I have the measurements done. But I have to figure this out a little bit at first to have something to put down. That way I have kind of something to fight against or to reference. Even though I know it's not perfectly right, I'm doing it just right now to give me something to work with. And it kind of helps you maybe not feel so worried that the page is blankly staring at you. You don't necessarily, like I said, have to do this for the whole still life. You could do, it'd be probably just as good, and some people teach it this way, to measure out some more boxes on your paper and do it inside of the boxes. I teach it that way at times as well, but I think I found over time as I've been teaching that it's actually a little bit easier if people just lay something down, even though it's not perfect. And I did this quicker than I normally would because I want you guys to be able to stay awake for this video. But you have the idea of it there, I think, pretty clearly. So now what I'm going to do is I'm especially going to focus on this mouthwash bottle over here. And I'm going to take you through really carefully measuring it. So I'm going to focus on this here. And I have my quick intuitive gesture down over on this side of the page. Okay? So I'm going to take and measure. I already have the basic unit measurements. I know the cap. I have 1, 2, 3. So 3 more. 1, 2. That's 3. 4. It's actually way too... I have it too wide. I mean too tall. 1, 2. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. It should only be to like right there. So that shows me right away I'm off on that. So I can go, okay, that's going to be the bottom of my bottle, or it goes into the fabric of the blanket. I'm like, okay, that's perfect. Now I'm going to do the width of it. I'm going to find that again, the basic unit measurement. And I'm going to go, okay, it's 1.5. So I go 1, move my finger over to half, and then go like that and go half. So it's actually only to there. So I have this bottle pretty far off right now. So with that, I can kind of adjust the shape a little bit and come back to this and say, okay, it's way too wide. I'm building the big shapes. So now that I have that squared away a little bit better, put into the right scale, I can erase some of my extra lines that are going to get in the way and are bothering me. So I'm going to take my pencil and just go, okay, I'm going to be really careful not to erase, I should say, my basic unit of measurement. That would be really bad, right? Because I really, really need that to use for the whole drawing I'm going to be doing. I lost my eraser, so I'm grabbing a new one. So I'm going to erase some of the extra lines that are going to get in my way and confuse me now that I have something that's getting more accurate. I'm going to make sure I keep my hash marks though. Now, an important thing I need to figure out now is where is the neck of the bottle in comparison to where the shoulders of it are. You could think about the shoulders being those parts that connect into the... So what do I mean by the neck of the bottle and the shoulders? This one has a very short neck right here. And this is what I'm talking about with the shoulders. So I'm going to do this real quick and go, okay, the neck is how big compared to the top. I'm going to actually find the width of that little neck and say it's only like one, it's like one of, let's see, find it and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's like an eighth of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's a tiny little space. So I know that's there, and I'm going to just kind of put it in like a shape. And then it drops down, so I'm going to drop it down, okay. So now I have sort of the neck. Now I'm going to find out how far down the shoulder is, the shoulder part of it, compared to the whole thing. So I'm going to measure from the bottom of the cap to the shoulder line on it, right there. Okay? So I'm going to put my hand out like I would, put my thumb up to the bottom of the cap, and then put the top of the pencil to the bottom of the cap, and then move my thumb up to the edge right there. And I'm going to compare it. It's about 3/4 of the total cap. So here's my cap. It's about 3/4. So I have that much is about 3/4 visually. I'm going to take and go, okay, the shoulder should be down further. It's going to be about right here. So the shoulder is too high up on my intuitive gesture, which is good to know. So I'm going to take and adjust that on my drawing. I'm going to go, okay. And at the time, I can also check an angle if I wanted to with my pencil, get some angles and see if they're accurate by using my pencil like this, like a protractor or a clock, and kind of checking some angles at the same time. Something we'll be talking more and more about as we go. So that's the shoulder. I'm going to erase some extra lines that are bothering me right now. And so I'm building this thing up shape by shape. If you see all of this over here, these are my intuitive gestures. This is the part I'm building up shape by shape. And see how it's getting more and more accurate as I'm going? Now I'm going to just check and see if I have the width and the height of the cap correct. So I'm going to use this same measurement. I'm going to measure from the bottom of the cap to the top of it. And I'm going to compare it to the top of the cap. See how the cap goes down at an angle like this and like that? I'm going to use it and compare it to the top of the cap. Find that measurement, hold it tight, flip it, and say, okay, it's actually about half, a little more than half at the top of the cap. So if I find my basic unit of measurement again on the paper, right there, and say a little more than half, then I have my cap top too big. It should only actually be about that big. And it curves at the top because it's a round ellipse. Oops, you can't see. It curves at the top because it's a round ellipse and it's a little big. So I can go, okay, it's going to be actually like that. And it looks like I have it too wide at the bottom too, so I'm going to check that as well. Find my measurement again. Every time going back to that basic unit measurement, you find it, put the top of the pencil, move your hand up, there it is, and flip it and see. Well, surprisingly from where I'm sitting, it's about exactly the same. The unit of measurement to the width of the bottom of the cap is the same. So I'm going to go like that, and I'm going to find it, and look what I've done. I have it too narrow, actually. So it's a little bit too narrow. So there, I put those little hash marks down, make it the same, and now I'm going to give myself the shape of that. Okay, so there I am. I'm putting myself down and put the shape of it. And I know right now I can tell you, if you look at this from my eye level, it's actually a small smile shape, ever so slightly a smiley shape. So I'm going to say, okay, it can't just be a flat line, it has to be a smiley shape. Alright, so I have some extra lines there. I made it the wrong size, so I'm going to just go ahead and I have this starting here. Now I'm going to go ahead and erase the extra lines that are in my way. You can use a kneaded eraser and make it into a point like this if you want. So you can see I'm building this up bit by bit by bit, checking things, and they're becoming more accurate. And the bottle that was just a quick gesture drawing is now becoming something that's looking more and more accurate bit by bit. Now, I'm going to try to get the angle, the depth of the bottle. Well, I can't see any depth. I'm going to try to make sure I have the mouthwash in the bottle at the right level. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to check and see if it's the right height for the mouthwash, the blue inside the bottle. Make sure it's at the right height. Okay, so there's my drawing board sliding on me. There it is. I've got one basic unit measurement. There it is, 1. And we go down 1, and it's about 1.5 of those. So I go 1, and then half. It's going to be right around there for the mouthwash. The blue inside the bottle. I'm noticing something right away now that is bothering me, is that I don't have these lines defined well enough. I have them, but I'm not happy with the way the lines on the edge of the bottle look. And I just want to check and see if I have the height right. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, so it's 4 all the way down there. But what's wrong is the angles of the lines. And I think what I realize is the center point of my mouthwash, if you look on the camera, is actually at a little bit, the center line is actually up at an angle because it's on a bed, it's not perfectly firm. So I'm going to adjust these lines on the page and say, okay, and check the angle and give myself sort of an axis line down the middle of the bottle. Okay, and then I'll be able to adjust the lines on the side of the bottle as well because of that. So I'm doing that right now. And I'm building this up bit by bit. I'm building it up to see if I can get a really accurate, measured, observational drawing of this bottle. And you can see as I'm going, it's getting more and more accurate, more and more detail, and it's getting clearer and clearer, looking like the actual bottle. I'm going to go through this process for every one of these objects if I'm going to do observational still life. That's why I want you to pick some interesting objects, because you're going to be spending some time with them, and you want to make sure you like the drawing that you spent so long working on. So now I'm going to start getting even more detailed. And I was looking at this bottle, and I'm noticing that this little neck down here goes all the way to the edge, and then there's a littler neck, and then it curves around. So I actually am going to start trying to add more detail like that. I'm going to get into these little details, and there's a piece that goes all the way below the cap, and then a straight part in the neck. So I had that in my drawing, but now I'm going to actually come in and clarify it even further. And this is where I'm going to spend some time doing what we would call that contour drawing, that accurate contour drawing. I'm going to see if you can get closer to you and see if you can see the paper. There we go. these. Okay. So I have that right there. You can't see what I'm measuring now, but you can see this. And this is where I'm going to take and really slow my eye and hand down and really decide where those things are that I've been measuring, how they actually are. And I'm going to use the skill I've been developing through slowing down and contour to get in here and spend some time with my hand really slowly. I need a darker pencil. This is not very sharp. You gotta sharpen up those pencils. Make sure you keep those pencils sharp, like I said in the first one. Otherwise, it's hard to get an accurate line. And I'm going to really spend the time getting in there and doing that detail. And tracing the edge with my eye. I'm going to stop after the bottle because I think it's about 35 minutes. That's long enough for the slideshow. And then I'm going to show you, I'm going to stop it for a minute and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to place the next object in the process. I'm not going to do the whole next object, but I'm just going to show you how to place it by measuring. And that line is really pretty straight, but I'm just going to slow down and say, okay, it looks good, but there's little variations, even though it's mechanically made, that I want to get this little bump right here. Slowing down and using that continuous contour practice that I have. Okay? And especially here with the mouthwashes, I know that I know that the mouthwash is there, but I want to truly get the edges, how it's sitting with bubbles. That's the label, so I can skip that part and go to the other side and get some of that detail in. I don't want you guys to focus on drawing like writing on labels so much as the forms. If you get too into drawing on the labels, you can spend forever writing actor store and stuff. You can do some of the detail like maybe actor store, but don't do all these lines. Focus on getting the forms down, okay? But here, up here, there's part of this bottle. It's interesting. I'm going to do, it's like a barely light line because it's lightly showing right there. I'm not going to worry about all the texture as of right now. See all this line texture? Because I want to focus on getting some of the other forms in. But this is something I would probably do, and I would do it by carefully seeing that it's really small. This is like later on though to add this type of detail. I don't want to do that right now because I need to get the overall shapes. And I'm building, like I talked to you a lot of times on the slideshow, from big to small, okay? So that's that. Now where I go, I need to figure out where the book and this neti pot are. I'm going to do the neti pot first. What I'm going to do is find out here in the space that distance of the cap, my basic unit measurement, line it up, and I'm going to say, how many is it between that edge of this bottle, edge of the bottle, and the handle of the neti pot? Okay, so I'm going to go, okay, it's going to be 1. It's 1 cap for the handle of the neti pot. So back down here, if you remember my basic unit measurement right there, and go 1. I got the handle pretty close on the intuitive gesture. That's good. But I think I got the overall shape of the neti pot off. So now I'm going to put a box. I'm going to make a box that this neti pot goes inside of on my paper, just like we did for the whole drawing. I'm going to do it for that. So I'm going to go, okay, find my basic unit measurement, 1. Now the neti pot from the back of the handle, 1, 2 and a half. So it's 2.5 of these. I know where the back of it is. I got 1. Let me see my paper. I got 1. So I go 1, 2 and a half. It goes all the way out to there. So I do a little hash mark. These are the guidelines. My neti pot I drew was way too small. How many high is it? Again, I'm going to find it and go 1.5 1.5. So it's 1 up to there, and then I'm going to remove my hand to get the half and go it's up to here. So it's 1.5. So I have the height way off as well. So you can see that it should be within this box right here. So I'm going to go ahead and redo an intuitive gesture of it inside of this. I'm going to erase my old one because it's just going to get in the way. And I'm going to say, okay, it's got to fit inside there. So now I have a better idea. This is why you're working light on this stuff. So you can go, okay, the top of it's going to be there. I'm going to do an idea that it's going to be roundish, very lightly. Handle is down a little bit. I'm going to do the handle. Goes almost to the base. So I'm going to do that. Keep going it in. And I know that it sticks out over here. So I'm going to try that and go, okay, somewhere over there. I have a better shape now. It's not perfect, but it's a better shape. What am I going to do with this shape that I just created? I'm going to do the exact same thing I just did with the bottle and go through and measure the parts and see what I can come up with. Alright? So I'm going to do that for a minute and then I'll show you what I've got on my after I set it up for a second longer. So I spent some time getting the shape of that a little bit more accurate. And it's still blocked out. I just redid the intuitive gesture. And I want to show you guys what I did. I started measuring, for example, how big the handle was compared to the cap of the mouthwash, and then how big the top was. And then I started measuring how high up was the spout, and I kind of got something. But I need to keep building it up, and I have a sort of closer shape. I'm blocking it out into the shape. But I'm already noticing different things while I'm looking at it. For example, one thing is the angle of the neti pot spout compared to mine is way off. So I'm going to have to adjust that and go, okay, it's supposed to be more like that. So that means the whole bottom of this is too big, which makes sense because I was looking at it, this whole shape didn't make sense. So I can adjust that and go, okay, that should be the angle guideline. Now I can adjust it again and go, okay, it should be like that, which makes it make more sense. So I'm going to have to keep adjusting it as I go, but you get the idea, I think, that I'm measuring against this. So internal proportions of something as well. The handle, I measured this compared to that visually, not actually. I measured the top, the width of the top compared to the bottle, and I got something that was closer. And then I came in, after I get something even closer, I can come in here and actually do that contour drawing like I've been talking about. And I am erasing, but I'm not constantly erasing because I don't want to get rid of my reference points. I need to keep reference points until I'm got something that I'm happy with. And if I erase a line as soon as I put it down, and I have no reference for the new correct line. That's what I'm trying to say about don't get rid of your reference points. So you can see how the process works, the bottle. You keep working on this one. After I'm done with that, then I'm going to need to measure over and do the salt, find the box for the salt shaker and put that in, and then check the books. But this is how you build a still life doing observational drawing. You're getting the spaces. If you see here, I did a line to measure how far it was to the back of the handle, and then I measured the box for the neti pot, and then I would do the same thing to get the distance between the neti pot and the salt shaker, find my basic unit measurement and say, okay, it's about 1/4 of that, so that would be over there. Okay, and then how big is the salt shaker compared to that? I go 1.5. So I'm going to make the box. It's way bigger than this. It's bigger than I have it on the page, so it's going to be 1.5. So I go 1 and then 1/2. So it should be all the way up there. And then how wide is it overall to the very edge width? At the bottom, it's the widest. it's one of those. So it should be that wide. So I have that box that it goes inside of. And this part's a little sketchy because you're doing hash marks. But when you actually go to do the final, that's when you get rid of the sketchiness. See, this box is going to be where the salt shaker fits, so I have to redraw it. Now that I have it accurate size for the box, I can erase the salt shaker drawing that I had inside. The intuitive gesture, I can erase it a little bit. And I can fix it and do a bit of a new one. Kind of do, okay, I know that's how wide it is. It's not, I can do a line down the middle to help me figure out where the top of the shaker would be. I know it's not as wide as the bottom, so I can just keep doing that like I did with the neti pot. Build up an intuitive gesture and then start checking all the parts and building them up to be accurate, just like I did with the mouthwash over here. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I think this is enough information for you to get going on it. And we're going to keep building our knowledge base as we go along. I'm sorry if sometimes I get a little quiet on these videos. It's hard for me to draw and talk to you at the same time with the camera, basically. If we're in class, I wouldn't have to be worried about hitting the camera. I'm turning aside and saying, oh, it's stopped recording, yada, yada. But I think you're getting the idea, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what kind of drawings you're going to get out of this. So take care, guys, and I'll talk to you and interact with you soon, hopefully. Looking forward to seeing your drawings.